Will Bayern Munich win a trophy this season? How are things coming along for Vincent Kompany? Is he built to last? Are each of the individual players performing up to their potential? It's time to look at a lot of these questions and more in this State of the Season Address November International Break edition. Welcome back to the Always Bayern Chelsea show. Thank you for joining me here today. I'm Danny. I'm the Bayern Munich half of Always Bayern Chelsea. And thank you for tuning in to this video edition special episode. Go ahead and check things out on the YouTube channel, Always Bayern Chelsea, if you aren't already watching this there. This episode will be a little bit of a deviation from our normal podcast where Jim and I, the Chelsea fan, go back and forth and talk about our squad. So don't forget to like and subscribe to the YouTube channel as well. Let's just jump right in and address how things are looking for Bayern Munich so far during the November 2024 international break. Okay, so currently Bayern Munich sits on top of the Bundesliga table with 8 wins, 2 draws, and 0 losses, still undefeated there. It's a little bit of a different story in the Champions League where they're all the way down at 17th in the table, and they have 2 wins, 2 losses, and 0 draws in the Champions League. In the DFB Pokal, Bayern Munich is into the round of 16 with winning their first 2 matches, and now they face Leverkusen, so that's going to be a doozy of a match. That one's coming up here at the end of the month, along with PSG in the Champions League and Dortmund in the Bundesliga. So we got an exciting run of matches here after this international break, and man, I'm kind of chomping at the bits, ready to get back into it. Okay, so let's address how things are looking so far for Bayern Munich this season. As we talked about in the October international break update, Bayern started the season red hot. Scoring 5, 6, sometimes 9 goals in a match. And their offense really looked unstoppable. The defense looked a little shaky at times. And I believe that in October they had just come off of a loss to Villa, a draw to Leverkusen, and a draw to Frankfurt, if I'm remembering the timeline correctly. But either way, Bayern had hit a little bit of a bump in the road to their hot start, and that continued when they got thumped by Barcelona 4-1 in the Champions League. So at that point, I think we as fans were starting to question Kompany, and rightfully so, because he was playing this very aggressive style that was getting exploited by the better teams, to be honest. It was working against lower level competition in the Bundesliga, but as soon as we played some better competition in the Champions League and the upper end of the table in the Bundesliga, we kind of got thrashed. And, there was debate, is that on the defense for breaking down under pressure? Is that on Kompany for putting them in tough positions? And maybe the answer is a little bit of both, but since then, Bayern Munich has kind of gotten back on a better track. They have looked great in the Bundesliga, haven't lost or drew in the Bundesliga since that Frankfurt match. They're sitting at the top of the table, like I mentioned, 26 points, and they got a 1-0 win against Benfica in the Champions League. They crushed Mainz in the Pokal, and just overall, things are looking a little bit better right now. I think Bayern is starting to really grasp Kompany's style, and he's able to, influence the players a little bit more, influence the squad in a way where they're just on the same page, and the defense is looking a lot better. Granted, we haven't really faced that upper echelon yet of competition again, so I'm a little bit nervous to see what's going to happen at that point, but overall right now I'm happy with how things are looking. So Bayern may be on the right track, but I think the question still does remain of, is the blueprint for how to beat Bayern Munich out there? Can teams just play in a low block and focus on counterattacking, focus on playing the ball long out of the back? And is that going to just fluster Bayern's defense enough to, get a, say, 1-0 victory or a 2-1 victory? Is it enough? And if you're a good team, a relatively well-coached team, can you just play in that sort of low block, park the bus style and beat Bayern every time? I think that question sort of is still out there, but I do like what I see so far from Kompany in the adjustments that he's made. So I think that kind of gives a relatively good overview of how the season has started so far. Again, I think Bayern's on the right track, but there are still questions to be answered. And, maybe most importantly, we got to remember that Vincent Kompany is a first-year head coach for Bayern and still a relatively young head coach in his career. And there's going to be growing pains with that. He hasn't coached a club as big as Bayern. We can't expect him to just go in and win the Champions League, in my opinion, his very first year, and think, anything else is going to be a failure. I think you have to look at, are the building blocks for success in the future there? And at this point, I would say yes. I think overall it's still too early to tell, but I'm willing to continue to give Kompany a chance and continue to give this Bayern Munich squad a chance. So speaking of the squad, I have written down in my notebook here every individual player and what I would rate them so far this season. So let's kind of just go through, and I'm going to talk about each one a little bit perhaps because, a good amount of these have changed since I last did this in October, and I think it'll be interesting to look at this as the season progresses and, just continue to update my player ratings. I should mention too, this grading scale, it's very subjective that I'm going through here, but roughly a 5 is going to be average, above a 5 is going to be a little bit above average, and below 5 is pretty poor in my eyes. So let's jump right in. Starting with keepers, I'm not rating Sven or Daniel Peretz because they just don't have enough playing time for me to really give them a proper grading. Let's talk about how Neuer's doing so far this season, because there's been a lot of debate and speculation about if he's going to retire. A lot of people are calling for him to retire after his performance so far this season, but I'm giving Neuer a 7. At this point, we're coming off of 5 clean sheets in a row, and no matter who you play, that isn't easy. So you can look at a lot of Neuer's stats this year and you think, they're pretty bad. They're down from where he usually is, His save percentage is not very good, but to be honest with you, I think there's more to it than just these stats. You have to look at the quality of shots that teams are getting against him, and oftentimes because of the high line that our defense is playing, when teams actually get a shot off at Neuer, it's a 1v1 situation. And in my mind, in those situations, you can't blame the keeper for not saving them most of the time. So if you look at the stats, you think, Neuer is having a really down season, but I don't know. I think he's doing all right. It's definitely not his best season so far, and it looks like he is slowing down. Again, who wouldn't? The guy's almost 40 years old. But either way, I think that his style that he plays is so important to the team that I don't think I want anybody else as my keeper right now. Neuer gets a 7. Now, there's a handful of defenders that I couldn't rate because they just haven't played enough for me to give them a true rating. Really just because they've been injured or whatever reason. They're younger guys. They're sitting on the bench. So that would include Buckman, Asnu, Stanisic, and Ito. I just want to make sure I got this right here. And now on to the guys that have played a little bit. Starting with Eric Dyer, I'm giving him a 5. Dyer just doesn't look like he fits very well in this Kompany system. He doesn't quite have the pace to play that high line and to run up with the rest of the team and the defense, but he hasn't looked horrible when he's played, and I still think he's a formidable backup. And last year he was one of our best center backs, so I'm not counting him out at this point. Sacha Boey, I'm giving a 6. He hasn't played since I last talked about him in the October international update, so I guess go back and check that one out if you're interested in a more in-depth analysis on him. But I thought he's looked all right when he's played. He didn't blow me out of the water, but he certainly looks good contributing to the attack, and I think Kompany has a plan with him as the right back, so I want to see more when he gets healthy, but he does seem to be a little bit of a defensive liability at times. Next, on to Rafa Guerreiro and Konrad Laimer. I'm going to lump them together because I'm giving them both a 6. Both of these guys are not right backs, but have been playing right back this season because of the injuries that we've had. And I think both of them, like Sacha Boey, have been a little bit of a defensive liability. Laimer just runs and runs and runs and really does contribute to the attack, on the other hand. And same with Guerreiro. I think Guerreiro's great at contributing to the attack. So both of these guys are a 6. They haven't been great at right back, but they also aren't naturally right backs, so I got to cut them some slack. And I'm still glad that both of these guys are on the squad, and I think that they do provide much necessary depth, especially when there are a lot of injuries. And next up, let's talk about the center back combination of Diet Upamecano and Kim Min-jae, because I'm giving them both a 7. I think both of these guys have had their ups and downs this season. Certainly they have made mistakes in big moments, as we've seen them do, honestly, the last couple years. However, I think that they're both looking good as of late. I mentioned it with Neuer, but 5 clean sheets in a row, that's something to really hang your hat on with pride. And I think Up and Kim are learning a lot under Kompany, and I think they have a shot to continue to get better, and Kompany clearly places a lot of faith in them. So as of right now, I'm liking what I see. I think we do need another center back, though, to at least give these guys some rest, I think that if they keep playing at the rate they are, including international matches, they're going to get worn down, so I'm a little bit worried about that. But as of right now, good on Kim and Upa. Moving up to the left back position, Alphonso Davies, he's getting a 9 out of 10 for me. I've spoken a lot about this on our podcast, but Davies looks completely rejuvenated under Vincent Kompany. He's an integral part of this system, and I really can't say enough how much he's changed from last year to this year. He looks much more mature. He looks much more interested in honestly playing. He contributes to the attack. He's done a good job at rushing back and, marking guys and getting back on defense. So if Davies keeps playing like this, I really hope Bayern can sign him to an extension, although, as I've said 1,000 times on this show, it doesn't look like that's going to happen. Moving on to the midfield here, where we do see a lot of injuries, unfortunately for Bayern Munich. Alexander Pavlovic is now injured, and so is João Palhinha. But let's talk about those two. For Pavlovic, I'm giving him an 8.5. Man, he looks like one of the best players on the team. So it's really a darn shame that he got injured, because he was clearly an extremely important part of Vincent Kompany's planning, and just overall a massive, massive contributor to this team, especially on the offensive side with his distribution and his IQ, honestly, which is crazy to say for such a young player. Palhinha now, I'm giving him a 7 out of 10. It definitely took him some time to get integrated into this squad. And for a while, he looked kind of lost. I don't think he necessarily should have been playing as high up as Kompany was playing him, but after a few matches, I think he got his feet under him, so to speak, and was really making a lot of great tackles and challenges, and was playing that defensive 6 style that Bayern so desperately has wanted for the last couple years. So Kompany. Palhinha was on the right track, and it's a shame that he got injured when he did. I hope he's not out for too much longer. Next up, I did want to talk about Leon Goretzka. I'm giving him a 6.5. Goretzka has gotten some more minutes since we last had the State of the Season address, and it's looked all right. I think he's been a little bit up and down, but what can you expect when you hardly ever play, and then when you do play, it's just because somebody got injured and you got to fill a gap. So I think there's a little bit left to be desired from Goretzka. I'm glad he is playing, though, and we'll see what happens from here, because he really has a chance now to prove himself again with Palhinha and Pavlovic injured. Next, I do want to talk about Joshua Kimmich, because I think Kimmich, along with Musiala and Kane, have been the best players on the team this season. I'm giving Kimmich a 9 out of 10. He's almost been perfect. He is arguably the most important player in this team, which is crazy to say when you have guys like Kane and Jamal Musiala, 2 absolute stars. But Kimmich is the glue that holds this team together in the midfield, as I've said a million times by now. I feel like a broken record, but Kimmich plays defense. He slinks back into that almost right back space, and essentially offers a back 3 and offers extra coverage for the back line with the 2 center backs. And he also plays offense. He also distributes the ball and gets assists. I mean, really, what can't he do? Now let's move on up and talk about some of the attacking players. Once again, there's a handful of guys here that I'm not giving a rating to just because they're too young or they haven't played very much, or maybe both. So starting off, that would be Irankunda and Ibrahimovic. Looking forward to hopefully seeing these youngsters play a little bit more, but right now I can't give them a proper rating. But now on to another youngster who I desperately want to see play more, and that is Mathys Tel. I'm giving Tel a 6 out of 10. He has unfortunately been the victim of Bayern just has too many wingers, and they all can't get playing time, and Tel is the one who's getting the least amount of playing time, and I think that partially adds to this, disappointing season for him so far. He hasn't looked god-awful by any means when he's played, but he's definitely not performing like I thought he would. We can go back to the predictions at the beginning of the season at some point and maybe see how wrong I was, unless Tel turns things around here. But unfortunately, it seems like when he plays, he has a little bit too much to prove, and that's clearly weighing on him. You know, the need to make the most out of your opportunities, and when you're feeling like that, you're almost never going to produce. And that's unfortunately the curse of sports sometimes, but hey, we're going to live with it, and hopefully Tel gets some more minutes and turns things around. Otherwise, it's looking like he may have to go out on loan. Next up, we do have Kingsley Coman, another winger who started off the year pretty poorly, but has put in a few decent performances now, and I'm upping his rating to a 6.5. I probably had him around a 5 last time around in October, but Kingsley Coman has certainly shown that he still does have it at times. My problem with him before was that he seemed to be lacking that finishing touch or that finishing cross or that finishing pass, and you can see he still has lost a step in that area sometimes, I think, but there's other times where I think he really does have it still, and he's shown that with a couple of beautiful goals, and he really just contributes more to this offense than he has before. But yeah, let's move on now. We got Serge Gnabry, another one of these wingers who has had a little bit of an up and down season, and that's, I think, what you're going to get out of guys like Gnabry and Coman, and honestly even Leroy Sané at this point in their careers. But Serge Gnabry, I'm giving a 7 just because he had such a hot start to the season. He looked great. He looked completely rejuvenated, and that's kind of tailed off a little bit. He's still putting in decent performances, but he does look a little bit more tired, and, it's so hard to sustain that elite level. There's very few players in the world that can do that, so Serge is getting a 7 for me at this point. And next up, we do have Leroy Sané, once again, another winger who's been kind of getting rotated in and out of this Vincent Kompany attacking system. Leroy Sané is getting a 7.5 for me. It seems like he's getting back up to fitness and should be fully fit soon if he's not already, but Bayern is definitely taking a conservative approach with him this season. Last year, he was oftentimes hurt and unable to perform to his highest potential, and we don't want to see that again, especially when you have so many wingers, because when Sané is on, he's one of the better wingers in the world, and he's shown glimpses of that so far this season, and I think he can get back there. It's just a matter of him being healthy and rotation happening. Next up, Michael Olise. I'm also giving him a 7.5. Just like all these wingers, he's looked up and down this season, but when he's on, he looks like he's, again, one of the better wingers in the world. So like Leroy Sané, I'm giving Michael Olise a 7.5. He is an extremely talented winger when he's on. I think there will be some adjustments maybe to be had living in Munich here and playing for Bayern Munich. It's a little bit higher level than he's been used to, but so far I've really liked what I've seen from the guy. And I'm just excited to see him on, hopefully more often, because he has slowed down a little bit. He had a very hot start, and since then he's maybe just picked up some fatigue with all these matches going on, international matches, club matches. But yeah, when Olise is on, he is one of the better wingers in the world. So Jamal Musiala, I'm giving a 9. He's put together a string of unbelievable performances here for Bayern, coming back from a short injury. He is scoring goals with his head. He's scoring goals with his feet. He's scoring goals from distance. I mean, this guy is just on a rampage at the moment. He's oozing confidence, and he's looking incredibly special. So while he's had a few off games this season, I mean, who hasn't? Jamal Musiala is looking like him. Next up is Harry Kane. I'm giving him a 9 as well. He has, I want to say, 26 goal contributions this season, and once again, Kane is looking unstoppable in terms of scoring. Like Musiala, he's had a few off games, but hey, who hasn't? Kane is an integral part of this offense. He plays defense as well, which is crazy to say about a striker. I don't think very many strikers track back and slide tackle and challenge, Kane is really one of a kind, and yeah, one of one, the best player in the world, in my opinion. And next up, I did want to put in a rating for Vincent Kompany. We talked about him quite a bit so far, but I'm giving Kompany a 7.5. A little bit left to be desired, especially in the Champions League, but hey, I said it before, I think Bayern's on the right track, and, I like the style of football that he plays. I think it's very attractive football, and I also just like how he manages. I like how he handles players from everything I've seen. I like how he handles the media. Yeah, overall, I don't have a lot of critiques about Kompany so far. I think he needs a little bit more experience against top-level teams and top-level coaches to figure out how to make adjustments. I don't know if that's the worst thing in the world. Sometimes it is at Bayern Munich because you're expected to win every single match, but yeah, just super stoked for the season, super excited to see how things play out. Maybe I'll be singing a different tune later on if big matches don't turn out the way we hope for them to. But as of right now, things are looking solid, and I would say I'm cautiously optimistic. So I just wanted to mention a few statistics I wrote down for Bayern's top performing players, but unsurprisingly, Harry Kane sits at the top with the most goal contributions, 26 goals and assists this season so far in all competitions. Jamal Musiala is right behind him with 13, and then we have Michael Olise with 9 goals and assists throughout all competitions behind Musiala. Okay, so now is the time to review my predictions from the beginning of the season and maybe provide a little bit more color to them, or just kind of update them as to what we've seen so far. So I predicted Bayern to win the Bundesliga, and as of right now, I firmly believe that will be the case. I sit here today with more confidence maybe even than I had at the beginning of the season for that. That's partially because Bayern Munich is looking very good in the Bundesliga. They're playing great, attractive football, as I said, but that's also because a few of the competition looks a little bit like they've lost a step or not as good as I thought they would be. That includes Leverkusen. Their black magic seems to have disappeared. Maybe they'll regain it, but at this point it seems to have disappeared. Stuttgart in particular, and Dortmund as well. So Bayern has 26 points right now in the Bundesliga, sitting at the top of the table, and we're going to look at the Bundesliga table in a little bit here, so I'll provide more context for that in particular, but right now, Bayern Munich is looking great. Now, I originally predicted an early loss in the DFB Pokal for Bayern Munich just because that seems to be what happens to them for some reason these last couple of years. And as of right now, I think Bayern has a much better shot in the Pokal than when I originally made that prediction. I think that if they beat Leverkusen, they're going to win it. They did draw Leverkusen in the round of 16, which is a bit of a bummer because I think that Leverkusen will be very motivated to play Bayern Munich. We haven't seen the best Bayer Leverkusen so far this season, but I think that they still do possess the ability and the talent to really gun with Bayern and maybe pull out a surprise there. And you know what? I think I'm going to amend my prediction to say Bayern Munich is going to win the DFB Pokal. So if you ask me today, that's what I'll give you. But again, Leverkusen is going to be a tough match. And then we got the Champions League, where Bayern has not looked their best. There is obviously more matches this year. There's no groups, so the table right now, Bayern sitting in 17th place with 6 points. That's not going to be how it ends up. but they do have some work to do, and they can't really afford any more losses, I don't think, in the Champions League. They got a very tough match against PSG coming up at the end of the month, as I mentioned, sandwiched in between Leverkusen and Dortmund, I believe. Bayern is going to have to turn things on in the Champions League. We saw a decent performance against Benfica, but it wasn't an overpowering performance that would make me think that they're going to just blow through the competition and win the Champions League. I do think they'll advance past the league phase. I don't think they're going to finish in the top 8, which is the automatic advance. I think they're going to have to play another match to advance, but yeah, I think they're going to advance through the league phase and then lose in one of the knockout rounds. I think they're going to have a tough draw, and I think they're going to play some good competition, and they're going to lose. Even though the final is in Munich, I don't think it's going to be a homecoming celebration in the Champions League. I think it's just not their year for the UCL trophy. And last but not least, let's do a state of the season address for the Bundesliga as a whole. I really enjoy the Bundesliga product. I enjoy watching the Bundesliga, so I'm going to run down the standings as things stand and talk about, maybe some surprises or maybe some changes that I think will happen before the end of the season. So, sitting atop the table, we do have Bayern Munich, and as I predicted, I think Bayern's going to lift the Bundesliga trophy at the end of the season. I think that they will win the league and kind of, get back to their winning ways there. I think they're very motivated to win the trophy this year after not winning it last year, and I think Kane will get his ever elusive first trophy. In second place, we do have RB Leipzig, and they're putting together a very good showing this year in the league. I don't think they're going to end the year second. I think they have a great team, a great attacking team, but I don't think they necessarily have the horses to keep it up all season long with Bayern Munich and maybe a couple other top teams. So I think Leipzig will finish pretty high in the table, but I don't think they will finish second. In third place, we do have Eintracht Frankfurt, and I like Frankfurt a lot, honestly. I don't think they can overtake Bayern at the top of the table, but man, I love the attacking system they have there with Marmoush and Ikiteki, and I know I'm not saying his name right. I almost can't say that name without even cracking a smile because I just know I'm butchering it so badly. Yeah, they are the real deal in my opinion. I think Frankfurt is a great team, and I think Omar Marmoush will make a splash in the world of football, not just in the Bundesliga in the coming years. So Frankfurt, I love. There's rumors that they are partnering with the Milwaukee Pro Soccer team, which I hope is still happening, but we haven't heard anything from them in a long, long time. So maybe Frankfurt will, by association, become sort of my hometown team. But either way, happy with how they're doing this year. In fourth place, you do have Bayer Leverkusen, and this team was able to pull off last-second wins every single match last year, it seemed like, and this year that's just not happening. Maybe it's the Champions League pressure and matches there, but they just do not look like the team that they were last year, which is surprising because they do have most of their players back. They do have Xabi Alonso still as the coach, and yeah, something about this team looks like they just had the wind taken out of their sails this year for some reason. Maybe it was the fact that they just decided to park the bus against Bayern, and I don't know if that subconsciously sends a message of we're not good enough this year to keep up with an attack like that. But it's weird. Yeah, they just don't seem to have it all together yet. It's still early in the season, and things could change. Leverkusen could turn into that monster that we saw them as last year. I do think they have the players to do it, and like I said, the coach to do it, but as of right now, they aren't looking like the same beast that they were last year. In fifth place, we do have Freiburg. It's a nice performance so far by them. They've kind of kept up with a lot of these top-level teams. I don't think they'll be able to do it all season, but I do think they'll finish, top 10 and probably closer to fifth place where they are right now. In sixth place, we have Union Berlin, who has been the surprise team of the season so far for me. I didn't think that they would be able to gather this many points with the style that they have, which is extremely defensive. They don't have any explosive attackers really, but they're just clawing their way through the season and scraping out points. So credit to them. They look like a very strong defensive unit, and I don't think they'll finish as high as 6th, but I could see them around that 10th spot. In 7th place, we do have Dortmund, and it's been a disappointing season for Dortmund because they, in the Pokal, they crashed out. They don't look great in the Champions League, and they don't look great in the Bundesliga. They are working with a new coach, kind of a new system that's a little bit more aggressive, I think, than they're used to, but it seems like they maybe don't have the players for it, and the players that they did bring in this offseason just aren't clicking in the offense. Dortmund, as always, I think will have the squad to compete with the top-level teams in the Bundesliga, but as of right now, they're not putting things together. I expect them to eventually, but it just doesn't look good right now. In 8th place, we have Werder Bremen. A pretty good season for them so far, and same with 9th place, which is Gladbach. I actually expected Gladbach to be farther down in the table, and maybe they'll end that way, but so far, so good for them. In 10th place, we have Mainz, and I actually predicted Mainz to have a better season this year, and it's looking like so far they are. I like how Mainz plays, and I think that's why I predicted them to be higher up in the table, but it's nice to see them up there at 10th. In 11th place, we have Stuttgart, and that's probably the biggest disappointment so far. They finished 2nd last year in the Bundesliga, but right now it looks like they just can't keep up with European football, Champions League football, and Bundesliga ball at the same time. They lost a few key players. They've been pretty unlucky with injuries so far this year. I think Sebastian Hoeneß is a great coach, and I think he'll turn things around for Stuttgart. I think they'll end up higher in the table, not necessarily 2nd like they were last year, but higher than 11th. In 12th place, we have Wolfsburg, and I expected them to be a little bit higher up in the table at this point, maybe around that 7th or 8th spot, but I think they can still get there. They've had a rough schedule so far and have looked okay playing these top teams. They just haven't been able to scrape out the points that they need. 13th place is Augsburg. They're a team that I kind of predicted to be on the lower end of the table, so maybe overplaying my expectations a little bit, but we'll see how things end up. In 14th place, we have Heidenheim, which is a bit of a disappointment for me because I actually predicted them to finish a little bit higher, I think in the top 10. You can check my predictions if you scroll deep into our Twitter account at @alwaysbeche. But Heidenheim is a team that I like and just has an incredible story, moving up from the 4th division, not having very much money, being such a small town. It just doesn't happen in professional football anymore these days. So Heidenheim is really an anomaly. Maybe they were tugging on my heartstrings a little bit, and that's why I thought they'd finish a little bit higher. But, they're playing in the Conference League this year, so we'll see what happens with them, but I'd like to see them finish a little bit higher. 15th place is Hoffenheim, and they're probably the biggest disappointment of the season so far, finishing, I believe, 7th last year. They're struggling handling European football and Bundesliga, it seems. I think they just fired their coach, but they still have Oliver Baumann, who's a great keeper, and a couple other good players, so you hope that they can figure things out and move up in the table. 16th place is the newly promoted St. Pauli, and I actually like this team a lot. I was really pleased with how they played Bayern the other week, and I think if they put performances like that together, they will move up in the table and avoid relegation. So good to see them. They have some very progressive fans too, and I just like the whole ethos around the club. 17th place is Kiel, and 18th place is Bochum. I think both of these teams are going to get relegated, if I'm being completely honest with you. They would be if the season ended today, and that's just how I see it. I don't think they have what it takes this year to stay up in the Bundesliga. And I think that officially concludes my State of the Season address for the international break in November 2024. Thank you for watching. Remember to like and subscribe, of course, and check out the podcast if you want our weekly match previews, match reactions, and just updates on all the action, because the footballing world is a lot of fun and it moves very fast. So once again, thank you for watching. Mia san mia.